Okay, so today we're going to be exploring the challenge of representing who we are and what we do. I'm going to start with a question. When is it the most important to communicate who you are and what you do? When, yeah.
You want us to write?
Write if you want, but also discuss.
Well, when we meet somebody new and we know that we're going to work together, for example.
Excellent.
Like at interviews.
Yeah.
And,
it's being recorded.
Yeah.
What happens if you're not represented effectively or you struggle to find the words?
In the situation of introducing yourself?
Yeah.
You keep on struggling until you find. It's my way.
I guess you just be misunderstood if your work is misunderstood, and then you might actually miss out on opportunities.
Yeah. Missing opportunity is a big one. Because often the moment passes quite quickly. I became aware of this issue when we did the Arts Award training, because the Arts Award advisor had us answer like 5 questions about ourselves, and then one of the other artists in the room had to stand up and say what we said back. And I didn't particularly like what came. I was like, oh, that doesn't represent me much at all. And Helen said something similar. She said, oh, I just sound like somebody who wants to live in Winchester and make etching, and that's not how I want to be represented. So, can you think of a moment in your life, a specific example of when you weren't able to find the words, and write that down?
Example of what?
When you didn't successfully communicate who you are or what you do.
Yeah, at the last.
Just one example.
Just one.
Yeah, that's one example.
One memorable example.
The Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu.
That's what it is for me.
The Pikachu.
Yeah. Yeah, well.
You weren't represented very
Oh, the Machu Picchu. That's the one.
I just tried to get it in some idea. Yeah. What was the question again?
Think of a memorable moment when you weren't able to find the words.
Okay.
Also write down how it felt.
Mine is just in second year at university during like an assessment, and one of like the first questions that the tutor asked was like to define your practice, and I didn't really have a clue where I was or what I was really about. I just knew what work I'd done and why I'd done that specific work. I didn't really know what it said about myself or why I was doing it. I just know that's what I wanted to do. And it was only after that, when she explained it to me from her point of view, that I really understood why I was doing everything. She made me research all these different things, and it really opened my mind to who I was and why. But during, it was so awkward and frustrating, because I guess I just kept trying to explain it, but all I kept doing was just talking about my work and not about me and like why I do it. I was just like, well, I've done this, I've done that. She was like, yeah, but why, and this, that, and the other, and I was like, so it was just frustrating and awkward, and worst of all, because like, obviously it's a test, so it's even worse, but yeah, that was pretty bad.
Good. Thank you.
Me and Elise gave a talk at finished the School of Art after we'd graduated. And it was supposed to be about life after graduation and what our experiences had been. And I was very busy at the time and didn't prepare for it properly, and I didn't convey what I wanted to in terms of my experience after art school. And yeah, it was just really embarrassing actually, because I felt that when I was at art school, maybe not through spoken word but written word, I felt like I learned to communicate and articulate what I was doing effectively. And that had been the first time since graduating, I think, where I had to almost justify myself to an audience, and it felt horrible. So yeah, I just felt a bit like a fraud at that time. And I felt like coming away from it, I'd really missed an opportunity to connect with people that were about to be in a similar situation, and that was quite frustrating.
I haven't actually, because my memory is so bad that nothing was memorable.
Anything that you can remember?
But it's a general thing. I think, like, there are meetings or there are presentations or there are just interactions with everyday people, and there's always that element of, like, afterwards where you're thinking, you know, I could have said this could have taken this off to, especially if you feel it didn't particularly go well, you start to if and buts about the whole thing. But I think I think frustration is something that's kind of been mentioned before. But the interesting thing was that kind of mutual understanding, because in terms of when at uni we were looking at kind of who we were or defining our practice, there was always another person that was that reflection tool to access that kind of thing. Or if it wasn't a tutor, it was some other artist or something like that. So when you're in an environment where there is no, and especially this justification issue, where there's not only kind of no mirroring support system, but there's almost a vacuum in its place of demand for even some of the most frustrating ones are the ones that with perhaps people who the word art can mean like this, and when you're trying to explain your thing, that doesn't click them. You don't have enough time to create a whole context like you have in some environments for facilitating that necessary thing. So they just
So it's quite hard to find a punchy.
yeah, it's quite hard to make that accessible, but it's also hard for you to have that dialogue without, to a certain extent, the other person being a mutual grounds for it.
And what opportunity do you miss? What sense did you miss?
I think if it's like an everyday thing, one of the things like they will do is they often get, oh, you know, what do you do? Like kind of awful party line, like when someone's like holding a drink and walks up. So what do you do? And you know that they're just like head of accounting at such and such, and they've got like a whatever. And I think there's this whole package behind that question as well as the actual question. So if you say like they've got pre-assumptions already assigned to that, that are things you kind of.
Because when people ask that question, they want to associate you with something.
Yeah, they want to. It's a categorising thing, and those categories are part of the frustration, because, especially for us who we're constantly kicking out against the categories and what that means. And I mean, no one kind of takes apart art more than kind of artists in terms of like the category. And then, so if someone's trying to categorise you, then it's almost like that frustration is going to be there, no matter what. It doesn't matter like how good you look. So. Is that right?
Yeah. Anyone else?
I find it very hard to be punchy. I know what. I'm all right if somebody is talking to me on our own, like we were the other day with the and there's time. But I find it very hard to say what I want to describe what I'm doing in a very short space of time. My husband just sort of says, elevator speech. You should be able to get somebody in an elevator and tell them from one floor to the next, and selling yourself. But I find the hardest places in exhibition openings and busy, and quite often you get introduced to somebody you know's got influence, and they turn around and say, well, what are you doing right now? And I'm doing terrible at
I don't go anymore.
shortening it down and saying it clearly, and the thing is, if you mumble and you don't, somebody else jumps in.
Yeah. If you don't, they don't remember.
And they won't remember you either.
You have to interrupt them straight away, and it's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
Really hard. And also, just one other quick one. I was interviewed for a job recently, and people are in my area and know me, and I made the stupid assumption that they knew all my work. So I didn't sell myself because I assumed they knew what I'd done. And actually, it's amazing how people just don't notice other people very much, and they didn't know that I didn't get that job. So
I just had a twinge of, actually, that's why I've struggled with this so much, and I've come up with a whole system. Okay. Who's next?
that's really stupid thing to do.
It's really hard actually to know when you're in an interview, to know how much they know of you and how much they've read of your proposal and how many pitches they've been through, and can they relate it to you, or are they seen 50 people proposals just in a day and they can't even remember what image goes with what proposal, and it's really hard. But I did an experience. I was interviewed by a panel recently, and I didn't get the job, and that was traumatic because I spent 6 days writing the proposal and preparing for interview. The positive outcome was I actually got an interview, so I must have brushed up my proposal writing skills, so that's one step further than I was before. But I still didn't get the job, and I felt, I think there's a confidence thing. I walked into the room, and I was the last interviewee of the day, and everybody was behind their table, in their seat like this, behind their computers, and there was computer cables all over the table. And I had come with the intention of making them play, because I knew they would be bored by then, and they would have seen a lot of PowerPoint presentations. So I wanted them to feel, touch, see little bits and bobs. I had lots of things for them to play with. And I walked in the room, and there was no space on the table for me to put my stuff. And I was stupid, because I said, okay, I'm just going to put it on the floor, and I'll pass it on to you when it's relevant. And I just totally blanked that out. I forgot to give it to them. They didn't relate to it at all. And that was the whole pitch I was going to make. That was my selling point. And I didn't sell it at all. So it's really, I don't know, it's confidence, because one person of the panel was actually Alex. So that was great, because I called Alex the day after and I said, can I actually come to you and you tell me exactly what I did wrong and what I did well, etc. So that was like a super feedback, and that was a really good experience. And that's one thing she said to me, that's such a shame, because we didn't know you had things for us to play with. You didn't tell us, and we would have loved it, because we were really fed up and tired and bored and stuff. So it's confidence. And she said another time, she's walking to the room, said, well, actually, you probably have seen computers all day. Do you want to put them out, and I'll put my things on the table? And it's just coming with that approach, which is silly, but
It's
So it was
all
a
that.
big learning curve for you.
It
that one.
is, I totally,
Yeah.
it took me a long time to get over it. Still, I'm not over
Yeah.
it.
It could have been awful though if you'd gone in there and said, "Can we take all the laptops off paper?" They just went, "No."
Well, to be honest,
that's exactly the thing.
it's worth the risk.
Yourself out there.
It's worth the risk though, because the result is I still didn't get the job. So,
Yeah.
you know, one way or another,
Yeah.
if they told me no, at least I could have said, okay, so why don't you want me to show you, because I've got lots of things for you to play with. And then I could have sold myself better, you know, so I would have taken the risk, but in fact, art is all about risk taking. And then I feel like my second example was a little bit earlier, my proposal about the shop. I feel like I haven't reached anyone. No one seems to know what I want to do. And I felt quite embarrassed because I thought, oh God, I'm supposed to have like 16 years of experience, yeah, and I'm supposed to be able to write something that I want to do. And in reality, I didn't write it properly. Maybe I didn't spend enough time on it. But also, I don't know what I'm going to make. But as David put it, was what I should do is to be able to show the structure of something which is going to be loose enough for me not to say what I'm going to make, but it translates into, oh yeah, we really want to see that. And that's probably what I didn't do at the interview as well, at the previous interview. Just two things.
Thank you.
Well, the most memorable thing, memory is not very good either. So the last one, yeah, and yeah, I didn't feel like representing myself well. And it wasn't feel like I was trying to be prepared for it. I sat in front of my computer with images, with the PowerPoint open, and you know, for a week, you know, like every day I'd go on and I don't know which one, 20 slides, I don't know. And there's, you know, lack of confidence, you know, in that area, because one of the things I said in the presentation is that the way I think people might perceive my work, and so that's kind of how I pitched it, is that it's schizophrenic, which is probably not the right thing to say. But that's kind of what it feels like at the moment. I'm interested in different things visually, and you know, there's a kind of, you know, a core subject or emotion, but sometimes you need to kind of get out of that space and do something else. So I find it difficult to focus. And I'm doing it again now. But I've always had a problem with presenting myself in front of people. I just find it absolutely terrifying. The only time I can do that is if I'm on stage. You know, if I'm dressed up, or if I'm not dressed up, but if I'm in fancy dress.
Yeah.
And I put myself in character. It's the only way that I can actually. So sometimes I kind of relate to it, you know.
So you need a costume.
I need a costume.
You.
Yeah.
Well, what about
it's weird.
That could work.
Yeah, my best one is a scary clown. But that's when I do that, suddenly I gain, you know, confidence. But then when it's just me, I find it really hard. But there was one area of improvement the last time, is that my mouth didn't go completely dry. I was very happy with that, because normally I just,
So what opportunities did you feel you'd missed by not representing yourself as clearly as you wanted to?
Well, basically every time I do that is that you know, I don't communicate effectively what, why I do what I do.
Yeah.
And so then there's a misunderstanding, or lack of understanding, and therefore missed
opportunities, yeah.
Opportunities to create links and to create a conversation.
Yes.
At least a conversation.
Create a conversation. And I like what you said about links as well, because it's that ability to go, I understand what you do, I need to talk to you about this, or introduce you to this person, or recommend you for this job, or whatever. Yeah.
So I really experience it on a daily basis. It's not about remembering, it's about who I am. It's similar. That often it's the misrepresenting rather than the representing. And anyway, when I'm sitting in front of you, I'm not representing anybody, I'm just present. So that is my conclusion. I'm a bit older, and what I think is that, it's part of the communication. Sometimes I explain better, sometimes less. It's different degrees, different situations. It's varied. I miss plenty of opportunities. I'm still very happy and very fulfilled who I am, and that's what I want to give. I think that my role here is maybe to just kind of reassure and love who we are actually. We are all wonderful and talented, and we are alive and we are creative, we are intelligent with many intelligences, and it's really important to kind of focus on it as well. So opportunities, they're very important, and lots of them are being missed all the time, but then occasionally you also gain something in this journey. So that's
it's certainly not something that we need to beat ourselves up about, because even though we think we're the only ones doing it, as you can see, we're all doing it all the time.
But it is also that thing about yours was for like an opportunity or something, or that you're often putting yourself in an environment that isn't really made for you. Like, especially the personal things, I didn't get into art to be good at organising, or I got into art to sit in a tower, to produce work, not talk to anyone. Like social engagement, like the opposite of social engagement. I wanted to sit in a tower and shun the world while developing my own personal skills. And,
well said.
And now I'm trying to do public engagement.
Find yourself in the heart of the graveyard, so that explains everything.
My marketing skills aren't up to date.
But the whole business of making art is to communicate in a way that doesn't demand words, and so I find it very personal. When I was a teenager at school, I used to do lots of plays and things like that, and then one day they asked me to stand up in class and describe the most important thing to me, and I wrote a piece of why I want to be an artist, and I stood up, massive panic attack, and couldn't speak, and had to be taken out, and I never spoke in class after that, and it's just because it was incredibly personal, and I think that's what makes it extra hard to write about.
Yes,
I
feel very vulnerable. Because suddenly you're kind of, gosh, I'm opening something here. And it's a very vulnerable place to be in.
Yeah.
And then if you don't do it right, well, for me, if I don't do it right, I feel really let down. That's my fault. I did that.
Yes. Yeah.
It's funny because
you were the only one. Pitching.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really tough. Then you have to kind of put yourself back up. Okay.
It's interesting though how the emphasis, and I don't know if it's to do with education or what, but what you were saying about how art is something that allows you to communicate something without the need for words, but increasingly we're having to justify and defend it with words, whether spoken or written.
Yeah.
And we had, I was in a really interesting, it wasn't interesting actually, I was in a meeting with all of the research directors across the faculty at the university, and we were talking about the, try and keep this brief. Within a PhD, there is a what's called a transfer process that happens about halfway through, where the candidate has to defend their research to date to prove that it's PhD worthy, and in order to do that, it has to be an original contribution to knowledge rather than an analysis of current knowledge. And there are not many students within the university that are doing practice based research, so artists essentially making work and using that as part of their research. And it's a real issue because the whole structure of the assessment and thesis, the Viva, where you defend your research essentially in front of the panel, is all based on how well you can write about it and how well you can then articulate it. And actually, if that's not how you function, then there isn't this, that they're not held with equal, they're not on the same footing, the idea of practice-led research and written thesis. And I think it was you actually that shared that Radio 4 article about art schools. Was it you? I can't remember.
Possibly.
But they were talking about how academic art schools have become, and how it was supposed to be a space where it didn't matter whether you could write or talk about the work or anything like that, and actually it's all had these structures imposed on it, and maybe they don't sit so comfortably together.
Do you remember the talk by Brian Eno?
Yeah.
Yeah, were you there?
That was the radio, I think.
He was featured in this radio.
Oh, okay. He did a talk at WSA when we were first year.
Actually, he was talking, was talking about his experience of art school, where it was completely experimental. You turn up one day, you wouldn't have a clue what your tutors were doing. It was like some psychological experiment. He was talking about that.
Yeah. Well, at the talk, he was, he took his frustration of, the art education and the art world expecting so many words and so many explanations. And that when he was on the jury panel, he saw all those people just reading the blurb of the artist and not actually looking at the work, and he went mental. And he's saying this is, just, stop writing bullshit. Be honest, make your work and let it speak. Next year it was falling off his chair. He was very uncomfortable about it. It was quite funny. But
I think
there is a benefit. There is a benefit to learning skills that you don't want to learn. Like I often find that my comfort modes direct me to certain stuff, and that I do need this stuff that I don't like to make me do other things, and that actually getting stronger in those areas is beneficial to my person in general.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I found it helpful to learn how to talk about my work through research and essay writing and things like that. But it's only when you come across people that don't make work and say to you, there was one student in particular who would just be like, I haven't done anything all semester, but I'm just going to pretty much bullshit my way through it. And I'm just sat there that's not going to happen. I've been in every day working really hard, and so's X number of other people. And then you haven't been in once, not turned up to any lectures, not done the work, but you're just going to stroll on in and still do well. Nah, it does every time, because he just knows how to eloquently and beautifully talk about absolute rubbish. Because that's what he did. And it's not like he was. There are some artists that their practice is mainly theoretically, based. He wasn't that. He was just out partying the whole time and quite openly admitted it to every single student. It's not what he is, and he knew that he could get away with it. So that's when I think art school, surely he has to have a practice as well.
that won't really sustain him outside of art school.
Unfortunately, he has really rich parents, and
Well, I mean,
not.
sustain. I don't mean sustain him financially. I mean sustain him in terms of his
Yeah,
credibility.
As an
he's got really well connected.
You can be an art critic and then
Yeah, he's basically really well set up.
He would do well.
It's the most frustrating thing. Yeah.
Oh no, but I know what you mean. I know that at the end of the day he's losing out because when you have the courage to go deep into something, you gain. You know, you go deep and you find
you're not on the journey
if you
for a
give
business.
up on that journey, then you miss so much. I mean, you just learn to cheat, so you become a successful cheater. Big deal, you know.
It's a shame that that's financially more beneficial.
Yeah.
financially beneficial and being
But the journey process of the actual doing of it is the reason why we're all in it. Like, I didn't do it as a career path. I was just, I needed it to sustain me from destroying myself or others.
Yeah. So it's nice to say.
what it is for me.
I had a really interesting experience yesterday. There's one of the academics at uni that I'd never met before came into the office and we got talking, and then he asked me what I was doing because my contract finishes tomorrow, and he asked me what I was doing, and I tried to explain to him what I was doing here, and I was like, what? And it was because I hadn't really spoken to many people outside of here about it, and I was like, wow, this is really telling. Like, I need to be able to talk about this. And he's an artist, and I was talking to him a little bit about my own work, and he was like, well, that doesn't really sound like art, does it? It sounds like a lifestyle choice. He was like, if you did oil paintings about it, then maybe I might think it was art. And I was like, really? I'm in the creative industries faculty, and I'm coming across that kind of narrow-mindedness. I was like, shouldn't make assumptions that people always think about things in the same way.
This is a tool that you can use, and it is something that I came up with to help people find those punchy phrases and find the connections between what seems to be just completely scattered bits of themselves in their lives, that umbrella. So one minute you're working on this with those people, the next minute you're working with that, and what's the connection? Well, the connection is you. There is this higher context that makes sense of it all. Because I want you to be able to, when needed, make that impression so that people go, aha, I was speaking to such and such, and that I need to introduce them, or hey, obviously these associates need to be working together, or whatever. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. First question to think about is identifying your passion. So your passion is something that really lights you up and gives you energy. You could talk about it for all day. You become more animated when you talk about it. The other thing that might be worth drawing your attention to is this top half is about you, and this bottom half is about what your message is, like what you actually want to say about your work, and aligning it so people understand why you're doing the work that you're doing, because it's in tune with your talent and your interests and your personality. So finding your passion is relevant because when people can see what you're passionate about, they have a sense of who you are, what your personality is. So going back to the question, you can write in there, or you can just write notes on your other bit of paper. What energizes and lights you up?